Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Board of School Trustees for Fort Wayne Community Schools. This meeting is open to the public during Indiana's ongoing public health emergency as declared by Governor Holcomb. Masks are required for unvaccinated visitors. Social distancing, or all visitors, I believe. Social distancing is being practiced at the meeting, therefore some members of the public who wish to attend may be excluded. Priority for attendance in person will be given to the members of the media. This meeting is being simulcasted on Cable Comcast 54 and Frontier 24, is being live streamed on our Facebook page and our LTV 2454 Fort Wayne Community Schools YouTube channel. We begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call of members.
Good evening, Steve Corona from the 5th District.
Raleigh Booker, 4th District.
Jennifer Mathias, 2nd District. Maria Norman, Member at Large.
Julie Hollingsworth, District 1.
Noah Smith, 3rd District.
And I'm Ann Duff, Member at Large and President of the Board. And to my left is Angela Filler, our Clerk of the Board, and our Superintendent, Dr. Daniel. We will begin this meeting of 2022 with the election of our officers. Is there a nomination on the floor for officers this year?
Yes, I have a slate of officers to nominate. Ann Duff to serve again as president, and Maria Norman to serve again as vice president, and as secretary, Raleigh Booker.
Thank you, Julie. Is there a second for this
I'll second.
nomination? Thank you, Noah. Any comments or any additions, questions?
Julie, thank you for your service as secretary if this goes through. And Raleigh, looking forward to your
Yes.
input.
Okay, well, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have our officers for the year. We also have our awards and recognition. Oh, I was going to have some of you do those. So, since we have a Southside one, Raleigh, did you want to do the Purple Star School 2021? Page 5.
Okay. It is recommended that the board recognize Southside High School for receiving the Purple Star School Award. Southside has been designated as one of the 35 Purple Star schools by the Indiana Department of Education for 2021. Schools are awarded this designation by displaying a significant commitment to service members, veterans, and student families connected to our nation's military. The Purple Star School designation is valid for a 3-year time period. Tonight, we recognize social studies teacher John Baker and Principal Adam Swinford. Please come forward so we may congratulate you.
How are you?
Thank you. Could you,
Adam would be here, but he's,
can you tell us some of the things that you've done to receive this award?
There's a microphone right over here. If you
I think on my part, I didn't do a whole lot. I mean, I took 6 hours of training online. The goal is to just find out who the kids and families are, who are military families at our school, do the best we can to look after them. But if you've never been to Southside, I'd encourage you to go and just check out the veterans memorials that people in the past have set up. They're just beautiful. Veterans Day, Susan Thomas does an amazing job talking about family history. Dave Seipels teaches econ. We have a huge World War II memorial. His dad, his uncles, family, friends are all on the memorial. So I think this is just a kind of a final touch to a long history of acknowledgement of veteran service.
Well, great. Well, we appreciate your doing
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody have a good night.
Me too. Noah?
It is recommended the board recognize New Tech Academy for placing honorable mention for best use of external data in this year's Fall Data Challenge, Fight Food Insecurity. Over 75 teams consisting of 139 students submitted creative potential solutions to help provide relief for food scarcity and insecurity across the United States. New Tech Academy was the only high school that received honorable mention for best use of external data. Please come forward when your name is read to congratulate you. Sophia Shaw, a student. Nathan Ten, a student. Somo Ong, a student. Deb Birch, facilitator. Emily Oberlin, the New Tech Academy director. And then John Hauser, the Wayne High School principal. So guys, thanks. Nathan or Somo, you want to tell us, or Mrs. Birch, a little bit about your project?
And what external data
Yeah.
is and how you used it?
I got to meet these guys outside. They're very,
So this class was statistics, and it was a food insecurity challenge, and it's a national challenge. So basically, when we started this project, we looked at Allen County as a whole and looked at data and see where certain areas are food insecure. And then next, our group decided to focus on Delaware, and we looked at certain areas of Delaware where it was food insecure, and we showed examples of how we can help it. And yeah.
What did you learn about Allen County?
Allen County, we learned that certain parts are food insecure, and ways to help it would be to add like grocery stores or things like that, so like Aldi's or Walmart or supermarkets near those areas.
You can probably guess where that is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
thank you, Mrs. Birch.
Okay, it is recommended that the board recognize the Northside Marching Band for finishing in the top 10 at the ISMA State Fall Finals held at Lucas Oil Stadium on November 6, 2021. The Marching Legends earned a first-place score at the DeKalb, Carroll, and Homestead Invitationals while also earning gold earnings at ISMA Regionals and state or semi-state competitions. This made for the 39th time Northside has qualified for the ISMA State Finals. The name of this year's show was Spring and featured pieces by Edvard Grieg, Igor Stravinsky, and George Harrison. Please come forward when your name is read so we may congratulate you. Cassandra Kerr, drum major. Eva Kilbride, drum major. David Saduth, drum major. Aaron King, marching band director. Marcus Farr, assistant marching band director. Danielle Burgett, color guard director, and David West, Northside High School principal. Anybody want to tell us about your show and how you can bind
David
these
would like to.
three musicians?
We chose David before we started.
So do I take my mask off, or?
Yes, you can take it.
Sure.
No, leave it up? My apologies.
We can hear you.
Okay. So, I mean, what we did to get to state was, we worked hard every single day. We put in the work, we put in the effort. And, a lot of the people that we had not marched before. Two classes, actually, because of 2020. So it was a lot of work getting started, but once we got the ball rolling, it was fairly easy to get to Lucas Oil and to go there one more time.
How many times have you been there then?
I've been to state finals 4 times, 4 times now. Yeah, one of those being in Scholastic class, which does not go to Lucas Oil. So I've been to Lucas Oil 3 times. Yeah, that's for my high school career.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you plan on pursuing music down the road, or
No, I do not.
burned out?
I plan to go to Ivy Tech for HVAC.
Ah,
All
good
right.
choice.
Oh, okay, all right.
Will we see you in a band around town then, possibly?
Maybe.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay. It is recommended that the board recognize Amelia Pfluger for receiving the Indiana Association of the Gifted Leadership Award. The Indiana Association for the Gifted annually presents a leadership award to an individual whose exemplary leadership and outstanding contribution to gifted education has positively influenced Indiana's children, teachers, schools, programs, and/or policies. Amelia has worked in Fortin Community Schools since 2008 and has been a curriculum coordinator with High Ability since 2014. And is Amelia here this evening? Oh, there you are. Yep. Thank you. Did you want to tell us about some of the leadership positions you've been in?
Sure. Currently, right now, I'm the communications chair, so all of the social media piece for Indiana Association for the Gifted goes through me. But most recently, I served as president for 2 years until 2021. Had to go through a pandemic. That was lovely, with our conference that's normally held in December, having to postpone that, and having to go through a lot of different pieces with contracts with hotels and all of that. But probably the most exciting was that our national conference, so the National Association for Gifted Conference, will be in Indianapolis in this year, 2022. Okay. So our association is really working hard with national, and am able to serve on the programming committee right now to help facilitate what speakers will be coming.
Wonderful. Well, great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, we move on to our consent agenda, which includes our approval of a minutes, voucher, and payroll, and our personnel report. And it is also recommended that Sherry Neidlinger be appointed as treasurer, Stephen Pittenger and Elizabeth Reidinger as deputy treasurers for calendar year 2022, and that bonds for these positions be set as follows: treasurer $200,000, deputy treasurer $50,000 for both of those. And it is recommended that the administration be granted authority to execute any corporate resolutions required by the various banking depositories.
Move we approve.
Thank you. Second. Okay, and Dr. Daniel, is there anything you wanted to mention about the personnel report?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Now, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then we move on to our new business, and we have one item to approve, but I have to get to it first. Okay, it is recommended that the board approve the application for an acceptance of the Refugee Children's School Impact Grant for 2021-22 in the amount of $21,545.74 from the Indiana Department of Education. Funds from this grant will allow for the continuation of a range of supplemental services for the district's refugee students who are limited English proficient within their first 2 years in the United States. The grant supports interpreters to provide ongoing support for the students and their families, supplemental instruction materials, and personnel and materials to support family engagement. This non-competitive grant was written by Emily Schwartz-Kearns, Director of ELL. Emily will be available to answer any questions. Is there a motion for approval?
So motion.
Second.
And do we have any questions for Emily?
Emily is actually ill as well.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I have information from Emily if you have any
If we have, okay, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions?
I do. Do you know how many interpreters we actually have?
Okay, this grant is written for our newcomer refugees.
Mike, please. Thank you.
The grant is written for our 54 newcomer refugees students. It says the intended is to support the students and their families within the first 2 years. We use this for instructional materials, school supplies, and family engagement materials, personnel, teachers, and interpreters. I don't have a number. Would you like me to get that for you, Noah?
I'll follow up with an email.
Okay.
So 54 refugees, is that what you said?
Mhm.
Does it say where they are from?
Yes. The majority come from Burma and Myanmar, and their countries of origin are Thailand and Malaysia. Other recent refugee students come from Somalia, Tanzania, and the Congo.
Okay. Any other questions?
Have we not received any students from Afghanistan?
We had our first one, and that was, she came after the grant was written.
Gotcha.
So she was not included with the grant.
Okay.
We do have one in one of our middle schools.
So they're defining refugees as somebody that's come here recently, like this Afghan, is it?
It's in, they've been in the United States 2 years or less.
Okay. So $400 per student slash family, or roughly we're
Approximately.
doing.
It's not a big grant.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Nikki.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that is, oh, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to that ends our business portion. And now we will have Dr. Faye Williams-Robbins, Deputy Superintendent, and Riley Johnson, Assistant Principal of AMP Lab. They will present regarding the Fortin Community Schools AMP Lab at Electric Works. Thank you both.
Good evening. My comments are going to be extremely brief. I'm just here to kind of introduce Riley. Many of you were here when we first started this conversation around AMP Lab and what we wanted to do and being part of the Electric Works property. And Riley came on board. Actually, we hired him last year, and then he has spent this year with this being his focus. One of the things I can say, and I think Riley will speak to a little bit, is that as this has gone along, we have added components that just continues to deepen this and make it a more richer experience as our students begin to roll in here, not only as a high school portion, but what we're going to do in middle school. And I'm just really proud that we were able to get someone like Riley, and I know Liz Bryan is helping to support as well, to lead this because he has creative and great ideas. So I'm going to turn things over to Riley at this point.
President Duff, School Board, Dr. Daniel, thank you. I think we have a short video to kick off our conversation tonight.
AMP Lab at Electric Works is Fort Wayne Community Schools' new immersive half-day program for juniors and seniors. Students can either come for both junior and senior year, or they can come for junior or senior year. The vision for AMP Lab is to really create an immersive environment for students to collaborate and solve problems together. For AMP Lab, it's really about how do we bring a diverse group of students together and give them the tools, resources, and times to be creative, to solve problems, and try to tackle some of the challenges our community faces. That's important for Northeast Indiana because as we look at the way that the modern economy is changing and the role that young, vibrant students play in it is we need to think about how we put them in the forefront of that and really give them complex, challenging problems to try and tackle, not in isolation, but in collaboration with some of the industry leaders in Northeast Indiana. AMP Lab is made up of 4 distinct studios, and each studio provides access to resources that students might not have otherwise. We look at it as a playground, so each studio provides a really distinct purpose. So we have our GROW studio, which is a science R&D lab with an indoor greenhouse. We have our Create Studio, which is a content creators lab, so music, video, animation, graphic design. We have our Make Studio, which is a makerspace and fabrication lab, so the ability to build prototypes, 3D printing, CNC machines, woodworking. And we have our Venture Studio, which is our collaboration lab, the place where students can ideate and brainstorm. AMP Lab is really about bringing 3 core elements together. How do we bring entrepreneurial thinking, innovative mindsets, and creative processes together to solve real problems in various industry contexts? And so it's not about preparing students for one job or one type of industry, but it's really giving them the tools to tackle those problems across a wide variety of industries so that no matter where their path takes them, they're equipped to propel themselves forward and really amplify their voice in whatever job they choose to pursue. AMP Lab is open to 400 juniors and seniors from the 5 Fort Wayne Community School high schools. We see the prototype of a student being wide-ranging, and we think that we're going to have a very diverse demographic makeup, both in experiences, but also coming from every corner of Fort Wayne to make up that AMP Lab community. AMP Lab at Electric Works will be open to its first cohort of students in August of 2022, so the 2022-2023 school year. If a student's interested, AMP Lab's open to current 10th and 11th graders in Fort Wayne Community Schools. There's an application process, and families can find more information about that process at our website. Students apply via their counselor, so we're really excited to see the energy and buzz as students learn about this opportunity, and we only continue to see it to grow as we get closer to launch in August.
Awesome. So as Dr. Williams-Robbins said, like for me, you know, this is very much a pinch me project, right? To be able to be a part of the conversation around what does it mean to provide an immersive opportunity like AMP Lab for our students. And so tonight we really just want to share with you kind of some of that vision, but also where we're at in the process, because I kind of did it on purpose, but January 10th became a very monumental day as our student application launched today and our jobs got posted for our founding team. And so recently I heard Eric Headley talk a little bit, and he shared the definition of vision, and it really stuck with me in relationship to AMP Lab and what we're trying to create together here. And so as we look at our teenagers, how do we really take that ability to think about, but not only plan about their future in that marriage of both imagination and wisdom? A lot of times, right, we forget the imagination piece and we focus so much on, okay, you know, what are the 3 things you have to do to be able to move on to the next step? And so we're really excited that we think, as you heard me say in the video, that AMP Lab is really going to become that playground where students are able to marry those things together. And so I laugh as we think about this. This is probably the 1,000th iteration of what is AMP Lab, and I think before August there's probably going to be 1,000 more. But in a nutshell, it really focuses on 2 things. How do we immerse students in a problem-solving design think tank and launch pad? So as we think of that, right, the think tank element, how do we bring a diverse group of students together to really solve those complex problems together? And then the launch pad component, how do we create opportunity regardless of their background, their interests, their proposed path, and help them propel forward both individually and collectively. And so we really believe at the core that is ambiguous enough to allow us to have the flexibility to play, but it also gives us a really good North Star to think about. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge we have a lot of amazing traditional pathways in our community. And what I mean by that, as an educator, I went through a very traditional pathway to be able to teach in the classroom. And so as we look at the experiences that a lot of industries have in terms of that start to finish kind of linear progression, we really want to make sure and acknowledge our goal at AMP Lab isn't to replicate that. We know that each student that comes to us is going to have a very diverse group of interests, strengths, passions, and it's our goal to really build that ecosystem of opportunity around them. So regardless of where their finish ends up to be, that they've got some new capital to take with them, and it's not about this A to Z kind of straight line approach. And so with that, as AMP Lab has continued to evolve, I think there's really two inputs and two outputs that help define what that student experience is. So how do we prepare students to both grow their personal leadership capacity, but also their collaborative leadership capacity, right? So what does it mean to know myself and know my identity, but also what does that mean when I'm working with people that I like, people that I don't like, people that I've maybe never worked with before? And then in turn to really create two outputs. How do we develop a new generation of both intrapreneurs and entrepreneurs? And so when I use that term intrapreneur, I think that I'm very entrepreneurial as a person, and I've always been an employee. I've never owned my own company. And so having the values of intrapreneurship is something that is really vital to the success of a lot of organizations. But we know we also want to create the opportunity for the students that really want to make their own future to have that as well. And so we see kind of AMP Lab coming together in there's four pillars that come together in that. So how do we take the entrepreneurial mindsets, right? When we think of entrepreneurship, a lot of times we think of just the act of creating a business, but there's a lot of mindsets and actions that live under the surface that really create that entrepreneurial person. How do we marry that with innovative thinking, creative processes, right? A lot of times in society or in school, the innovation and creativity is the dessert, or it happens at the end. And so for us, as we've looked at this, how do we build that into the DNA and the foundations of our work so it drives what we do and isn't just a byproduct at the end? And so as we look at those three things, it's really then how do we marry that with a variety of industry skill sets? It's been really important for us to create or cast a wide net around what it looks like to build relationships with partners and provide access to opportunities for students when it comes to those skill sets, because ultimately we really want to do two things. How do we work with real people, real partners to solve real problems they're facing, but also let students have the opportunity to identify new problems? And so, again, I'd be remiss if I didn't just acknowledge, this doesn't exist without Electric Works, the campus. And so for us, as some of you have seen and you saw in the video, we're going to have one of the best facilities, if not in the state of Indiana, in the country. And to be at the heart of what's happening at Electric Works and what's about to happen in the next 10 years, allowing our students to have access to the amount of knowledge and opportunity that is right in our own neighborhood on that campus is something that we will continue to strive and challenge what that can look like to open the doors of our neighbors to those kids. So a little bit into the what will the experience look like for students? So as we've learned over the last couple of years in the growth of the focus around how do we support students in career pathways, in the pipelines in Allen County, at Electric Works, we're looking at it from that 30,000-foot view. And so the conduits we've developed are really these high-level lenses that help navigate the journey for us and our students. And so as you can see, they're pretty open-ended. And as we look at these conduits, things like business ecosystems, health innovations, we look at the marriage of how do we align to student interests. So as we have a wide variety of students, what does it look like for their interests to be met? And then how do we marry that with the types of partnerships and opportunities that come our way? And so as we look at that, what we've seen is you might have a student that's really interested in something like psychology, and what does it look like for them to bring that skill set or that interest to a partner in manufacturing, right? So how do we marry those two things via those lenses? Now, we really have identified kind of 3 layers of action for students. So at that holistic layer, that's where you might see the 200 students in the AM cohort or the 200 students in the PM cohort engaging in a holistic experience together where a ginormous problem is being brought to their attention, and what does it look like for them to try and partner with that entity or organization to try and solve it. At the middle level is really the personal layer. So I might, as a student, have a really deep interest that I want to take further. And so it's our goal to have a vast network, and we've already started building that network of opportunities where 3, 4, 5 students at a time might partner with an organization or a company to really dive in to a very specific problem that relates to that person or that student's interest and skills. And then at the last phase is really that launch phase. So how do we get hyper individualized? So regardless of the student, they've got an opportunity to really level up. And so we looked at that through things like work-based learning, so internships, job opportunities, project deep dives, where a student might come back as a senior and work with an individual company for all 36 weeks. And then we've got the tools, resources, and supports for students that might already have a business or might have a business idea that they want to bring to market to launch and run that business as part of their high school experience at AmpLab. And so just coming full circle, we know that AmpLab is going to be hard for a lot of people to wrap their mind around because it's not going to look, sound, or feel like any schooling experience I've had or you've had. But we really kind of see how do we create a hyper-focused experience that helps students with 3 things. How do they gain new skills? How do they build new relationships? And how do they get new experiences? So regardless of where their interest or their passion or their strengths lie, and regardless of their destination after they graduate. And so that's been something that we've been really keen on in our conversations with students. And I have to figure out a better way to say it, but we don't necessarily care where a student thinks they're going, whether that's college, right into the workforce, whether they want to start their business. It's our goal, how do we get them the skills, relationships, and experiences that they understand this is the right path for them. And so that might mean, okay, instead of graduating and getting a retail job, I now understand what it looks like to pursue a career that's connected to my interest. Or it might mean that I thought I was going to go to one college, but because of the relationships I built, that's opened the door to a new opportunity. And so really, it's the hyper ambiguous environment, but a really personalized experience for each of those 400 kids. And so as we think of that, this has been the hardest part. I feel like I've gotten the question 1,000 times, who's it for? And so far, as we've been out, talked to kids, talked to families, we're kind of seeing there's a little bit of everybody coming to the table. And so we've got students that are your high flyer academic achievers that really see this as something that could launch or propel them forward. We've got students in the middle that frankly are just disconnected from their schooling experience, and this seems exciting to them. And then we've got students that frankly school's been hard for them and they've never found their place. And they have academic struggles, attendance struggles, discipline struggles, and we potentially see Amp Lab as a place for them to find that voice. And so as we kind of look at it, what does it look like for them to be open-minded and curious and willing to work with people that they like and they don't like? But we really are seeing that it's going to be a melting pot of our Fort Wayne Community Schools community. And so as we think about desired outcomes, right, we're still 7 months away from opening the doors, but we really, at the highest level, think these 4 things are what matter most to us. And so how do we make sure that we fearlessly protect that Amp Lab culture? Because we know that by establishing the culture as a unique environment and protecting it, everything else will come after, right? So the desired academic, dual credit, career, whatever results that we want to come with it will come if we set that culture from day one. So we talked about how do we look at it through that radically personalized but highly connected lens. So it's not our goal at Amp Lab to look at the broad general stroke, but how are we getting at the super individualized level, and we're looking at each kid and what did we do at Amp Lab to help them level up regardless of what happens next. So that might mean they earn dual credit that they wouldn't have otherwise. That might mean that they gain some sort of industry certification. It might mean that they get a job offer from one of our partners. But as we look at that, how do we really stay hyper-focused on each kid? Looking at those skills and experiences and relationships as portable currency. So we've really tried to look at what does assessment have to look like. And we know that it's going to look drastically different than it does in any other place, because we want to make sure that whatever that currency students get, it's portable and it's future oriented. So it's something that they can take with them and they can actually use. And then lastly, it's really how do we look at workforce development and economic growth through a new lens? Historically, 15 to 18-year-olds are never a part of that conversation, and it's us adults telling them where they should fall in line. We believe that we're going to have some really good results at Amp Lab that flip that equation on its head and really put that cohort and that generation at a different seat at that table. So we don't know metrically what that looks like, but we think that if we stay really focused on these 4 things, that the outcomes we hope for will come with it. And so I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about kind of the ecosystem or network. Last week, there was an announcement about the Jim Kelly Career Pathway Center. And Dr. Daniel and I were able to represent Fort Wayne Community Schools. So the Amp Lab team is going to have a primary responsibility in what the relationship of our 8th graders look like at that experience. And so what we've seen, because of the energy and excitement, that Amp Lab is the heart, but there's going to really be, I use the term tentacles effect, where we're starting to see opportunity where I had an amazing conversation about a Fort Wayne Community Schools student storefront. So what would it look like if we had a location at Electric Works where any Fort Wayne Community Schools student with a business could sell their product out of? I've had an amazing conversation with a couple nonprofits about having some vacant land donated. So as we look at the expansion of our greenhouse, what would that look like into some Amp Lab run community gardens? And so we're really just excited about knowing that we're not even to, day one yet, the momentum and the support in the community is there. So really just kind of 3 next steps. As I said, the application is now open, and students at the 5 Fort Wayne Community Schools high schools apply via their counselor. And so we've tried to make the application process as simple as possible. So all they need to do is talk to their counselor, and there's just a couple clarifying questions with that. I'm also excited for anybody interested in learning more about joining that founding team. Our positions got posted today. So we have opportunities for support staff, existing educators, and even industry professionals to come in to the Fort Wayne Community Schools team. And then, we've met with about 125 businesses and organizations at this point, and there's 550 more to connect with. But if there's a community member that thinks that their business or organization would play a part in this project, they can reach out directly to me via email. And so it's been a whirlwind, and we've been really excited to see this project continue to evolve. Anybody that's been paying attention to the construction, it's ridiculous how fast they're moving on that project. And so for me, I feel like the growth and development of the building has really been synonymous with kind of the growth and development of what we believe Amp Lab can be. So again, I just want to thank you guys for your time and your attention. I'm excited because I feel like probably in 2 weeks from now, there'll be new elements that will change the conversation even more. But the momentum is there, and we're really excited for both the internal and external support that is on the table right now. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I have a few questions. We're talking about employees. I've watched this project from the beginning. I think I've sat even before as a board member in a couple meetings where it was introduced to the board and us coming on board to be in Electric Works. Is it still connected to STEAM and STEAM grants for Electric Works? And maybe you don't know that answer, and that's okay.
Yeah, so I can speak to the STEAM piece. So,
Okay.
right, when we look at the ubiquitous nature of STEAM, STEAM is really about the experience. And so as we look at our connection of the 4 studios and those conduits, we've really tried to keep the underlying goal around exposure and opportunity connected to those fields at the forefront. And I would say we've then opened it up a little bit more even. And then I think there's always funding elements. I don't think I can speak directly to prior to me, but we do know that there's going to be a couple grant opportunities forward once our doors are open, directly connected to STEAM education.
And I guess that's my question as being a board member. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm super excited about this project. I was excited to see the Jim Kelly career pathways, but always in one part of my job is to look over the budget and other things, and moving forward, I only see that this is getting bigger and better. And so how many employees will we have new to Amp Lab, and how many are we looking to have, who are in our district already that will transfer that direction? Or what are we looking at to start?
Yeah, so for both Amp Lab and Kelly Career Pathway Center, since it's one team, so there's 15 people total. 8 of those are what you would consider classroom teacher positions. There are 3 teacher leader positions that we've hired. Have those gone to the, sorry, I think those have come forward.
Yes, they were approved tonight.
And then some support staff. So in managing both of those, I think we're going to see both people from the district and external, so new people coming in at the same time.
Okay, so that was one of my questions is I did see the rendering or such of our logo on the new building that is, I'm guessing, the Boys and Girls Club building, and just wondered what our contribution is to that. I mean, everything comes with partnerships and business plan. Everything comes with a price or a cost. Is it just providing the students there? Is it providing the employees there? I just wondered what our contribution is to this. Yeah. I see the benefits.
No,
but
yeah.
so far.
So for the Kelly Career Pathway Center, since it's two programs under one bucket, essentially we've taken what the staff would be at Amp Lab and just, I don't want to say swallowed the Kelly Career Pathway Center into that. And so the investment that the district's making in that project is that we're bringing our students, so starting with 8th graders, and then that the team at Amp Lab will run in partnership with those middle school staffs at the 11 middle schools, the experience there. So it's nice because it's not in addition to, but we've kind of just designed it into our experience so that as we look at our staff, we've got the ability to support both programs with that 15 number.
Okay, so the 8th, from what I understand about that, and I know it's going away from Amp Lab, but just because it's together, the 8th graders that attend there, will they attend there once or or monthly? Or?
So to start, we're looking at twice a year. So it's about, so that's every 8th grader about twice a year. And so that's about 52 school days for year one. And it's about 80 kids in a cohort visiting at a time. So that's kind of our starting point, and then that gives us the ability to look at, do we expand that with the 8th grade cohort over time, where in year 2 it's a 4-day experience, or do we look at, is it best to look at 6th graders or 5th graders? So really starting with a really tight focus on that 2-day 8th grader experience, but then having the ability to decide where we go from there next.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
So to follow up on that, 400 kids at Amp Lab, 200 morning, 200 afternoon. So we're looking at about 25-to-1 student to teacher ratio. Is that right? So 200 divided by 8 is 25.
Yeah.
Is that good, Ms. Mathwell?
I know.
Go far.
Okay. So then are those teachers going to be responsible for those kids at Kelly program too, or how's that work?
No, so as we look at that kind of ecosystem so of those 3 teacher leaders, one of those 3 teacher leaders, I would argue, is one of our best middle school educators. So she is going to take the primary lead in that. And then with the flexibility and fluidity, we're able to support it. So maybe when one school's there, we decide that it's best that this teacher is at Kelly Career Pathway Center. I got to get used to saying that name, with that group. And then the next time, it's a different member of that staff. So I think a lot of that's going to be figuring out that. And then the third layer is the relationship with industry professionals. So you've got teachers and staff coming from the middle school. You have the Amp Lab team kind of organizing it, but you also have this layer of industry partners and professionals coming in to support. So in looking at the number of staff necessary to have that be successful, isn't as ginormous as you'd think. So a lot of it is also, we'll figure it out, like a little trial and error, to be honest.
So I'm an Amp Lab student, and I may go one day, and my teacher may not be there because they're at Kelly Pathway, and I may have a professional in talking about making widgets. Is that?
Yeah. So
what you're saying?
the beauty of kind of the organic nature of Amp Lab is the idea of kids going to one classroom with one teacher kind of shifts. So if we look at the goal of really putting the students in the driver's seat, we've talked a lot about what would it look like for them to co-create a schedule with the adults. And so to that, I think by knowing that variable is in the equation, I don't think that would ever come at a surprise. I think it would always be purposeful. And so that might mean, yes, so if there's a day where one of the process teachers is over with the middle school students, we might have 4 engineers from Essex in our building that day doing workshops on design principles. Or we might have Parkview's team from Miro with us doing conferencing with small groups. So really kind of, I don't want to say disrupting the idea of one period, one teacher, one class, I think is at the heart of our design.
You talked about the value of being in Electric Works and the partners and the collaboration that's going to happen there. We're projected to open up this August, right? Are there going to be other businesses there then this August?
No, not in August. So the nice thing is we feel like a good trajectory for August and September in terms of there's going to be a lot of culture setting, and we've got some relationships with some of those partners that will be there in the long run to really look at what those first 6 weeks look like. Do It Best, and don't quote me on this, but I believe is slated to move in either end of September, beginning of October of this year. So really it's that first 6-week window. The unique part of it is our students get that front row seat of the final stages of launch. And then really in October, we'll start to see, and I don't know the schedule in terms of when everybody moves in, but that Do It Best metric is really the big metric after us that kind of, I think, opens the floodgates for everyone else.
How many partners do you have currently?
Yeah, so I've met with right at about 125 businesses or organizations, and they range from the team at the Miro Center, Fort Wayne Metals, right, some of those larger scales, but also a lot of mom and pop, a lot of businesses that live right in our community, a lot of nonprofits, and then also looking at the governmental institutional. So with that, we've tried to create somewhat of a menu for them to really look at where's the return on investment of the relationship. So where would they like to invest in us, and what does that look like back for them? So of that 125, we found a lot of them are gravitating towards what would it look like for students to engage in real problem solving with them. But then that also means, okay, well, what investment are they going to have when it comes to people? And so we had an amazing conversation with a local company that I don't want to name yet, but they want to have one person on their staff in my building 1 day a week, every week. Might be a different person, but really shifting that relationship. And because they want to identify 3 to 5 kids that when they graduate from Fort Wayne Community Schools, they've already have relationships with this company that then they can offer high-paying, high-skilled jobs because the relationship's there.
What's your biggest fear?
Yeah, my biggest fear is always it's very much in pretend land right now. So every day, kind of a new concrete element comes into play. And as Dr. Williams-Robin said, I've always played on the fringes of public ed. So my fear is always it's not going to be as awesome as I hope it is. I know it's going to be, but just from a personal standpoint, I think that whether there's no pressure on the kids, but there's a lot of pressure on our team to make sure that we deliver to create the most immersive experience as possible for kids.
So I've heard you say, both in a presentation tonight and another time, you want this to be kind of, I'll use the word nebulous, kind of allow the kid to flow and find their path. What would you say to a parent that's worried about that?
Yeah, so what we've found in conversations like that with parents that kind of have that concern is really get hyper-focused on that kid. So really looking at what are that student's interests, what are that student's kind of perceived plans or paths, and then what does it look like at Amp Lab to level that up. So a great example would be I had a student at Southside that's really interested in engineering and being an architect. Very, very high achieving student. And so as we were talking through with that family, some of the very traditional concerns came up about like, is my student going to be ready for college? What does SAT scores look like? All of those things that are normal concerns as a parent. And so as we unpacked that a little bit, what we talked about was really what the student was looking for was authentic application. And so we talked about what would it look like at Amp Lab for that student to build a portfolio using engineering principles and architectural design to then make themselves the best candidate possible. So we talked about, a good example, one of those partners is Elevatus, right? So one of the leading architecture firms in our community. And so I know if this student shows up that, if she puts her best foot forward, that she's going to have the opportunity to get an internship, paid or unpaid, with that team. And so I think backtracking on that is really how do we step past some of the traditional perspectives of what that path to whether college or career look like, and then getting hyper-focused on, okay, at Amp Lab, for this student, would we really be able to develop a portfolio of skills, experiences, and relationships that kind of launch them to whatever that desired path is, versus thinking like, what does this look like for my student to go to college? It's how do we make sure that they've got the experiences that make them stand out in that really challenging process.
All this will be Fort Wayne Community School kids. We won't pull from other districts.
Yeah, so we are only open to the 5 Fort Wayne Community School high schools.
Will this affect teacher out? And this might not be your question. Will this affect teacher allocations at the high schools then?
I do not know the answer to that.
From those schools?
It could.
It could. Won't know until it happens then, or?
Yeah, this year, we don't know which school they're going to come from. So next year we can, make an estimate. We do that, we take this into account when we look at the high school allocations.
Okay. And I imagine from year 1 to, let's say, year 5 or 10 down the road, you're going to see some differences. What's your worry for year 1 that would look different from year 5 or 10, let's say? What are the first year kids not going to get that the year 5 or 10 year kids might get?
Yeah, so.
And I know you're guessing.
No, but you're right on. So we think that year 1's going to be a lot more structured than a year 5. And so what I mean by that is there's going to be some prescribed things that will happen next year. One, so that we can figure out, are we doing it right and what gaps are there, and then modify on that. So we know that in this first cohort, there's a big risk that they're taking. And so what we've talked about is how do we create a hyper organic environment with some really strong structures. And so what we think is we believe we've got some practices and beliefs both from education and outside, like human-centered design, agile project management, lean startup, that are processes that will benefit our students. But in year 1, we know we're going to try some stuff that's not going to be what we should, where in year 5, we'll probably have a little bit more of that well-oiled. So I think we are going to make sure that those kids know that in year 1, they're a little bit of the guinea pig, but we hope from the kind of organic model that there's a little bit of guinea pig happening probably for the lifespan of Amp Lab.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I was
Go ahead, Steve.
I was thinking about the Amp Lab as I watched 60 Minutes last night as they talked about the future of work. And one of the people they interviewed was the chief economist for LinkedIn. And what she said is that, thanks to COVID, it has accelerated a dramatic shift in the workplace. A couple of years ago, 1 in every, I think she said, 65 jobs was a remote job, and today it's now 1 in 7, and that is going to continue to change so that many, many more people will be working at home. And you spoke earlier about the ambiguity or flexibility in the design structure of instruction, and I think kids are going to have to understand that their workplace is going to be so much different than what their folks worked at, and that they're going to have to stand much stronger on their skills and to be an entrepreneur. One of the other people they featured in the article was a woman who started a company in which she matches administrative assistants with supervisors, bosses, and somebody might be on the West Coast and somebody might be on the East Coast. And she says that match rate has tripled and quadrupled over the past couple of months. So kids are going to have to understand the workplace will not be as it was 2 years ago. And they're going to have to learn those skills and be confident in those skills. At the same time, that entry-level work, retail jobs and shopping centers are going away, and they're not going to be able to rely on those to sustain themselves as they enter the workplace. So I think the timing of the startup of AmpLab is just perfect.
Thank you.
I have a couple other questions. I know that we put out there for parents to, you had a couple Zoom, FaceTime, or Zoom Lives, or whatever we call them nowadays, for information.
Yeah.
How are the students themselves? I have an 11th grader. Now, I may not be in tune with what she wants because she's at the Career Center already, so that's not an option for her. So I haven't had her come to me and say, hey, there's this really cool new opportunity for me. So how are we getting our students, since it's open today, I'd assume, but I don't know, how we let our students know about it?
Yeah, so we have physically visited every school except for Snyder. We're working with Snyder's team to really figure out what that plan looks like here in the next 10 days. And so essentially at Snyder, we've really focused on the counselors and what relationship those counselors have. At the other schools, we've done a little bit of a hodgepodge where in some instances we've spoken to every 10th and 11th grader via English classes. We've also done some sessions where we spoke with 10th and 11th graders in the auditorium. Last week at Northrop, I was blessed to take some immersive technology with me and be at lunch and talk to kids there. So really, outside of Snyder, and like I said, I'm working with their team there to figure out here in the next 10 days what that looks like. We've been in front of every 10th and 11th grader in the district so far.
Well, my students at Snyder, so that might be the... So, okay, let's say you have an overwhelming response to this and we only have 200 and 200, how do we choose?
Yeah, so what we did was we divided the original seats by school size. So in a progressive manner, so Northrop has 98 pre-allotted seats, Snyder 90, and so forth. So that way every 10th and 11th grader has the same percentage chance of getting one of those seats. And so if a school has more applicants than pre-allotted seats, it's a lottery just within that school's applicants. And then any school that has more, that wait list is lotteried, so all 5 schools are lotteried together in the wait list. And then any school that by chance doesn't fill their pre-allotted seats will fill off the wait list from the other 4 schools. So that way, if there's a school where there's really high interest, those students still have an opportunity to backfill on that. I hope that makes sense.
Yes.
So do you see this working well then? I know a little bit more about maybe 3DE than, but working well with the way, because if we're taking 3DE to all of our high schools and then we're jumping off to this as well as another opportunity, I only see great things. I mean,
Yeah.
possibilities are a little endless.
So I don't think I know enough about 3DE to have a complete answer to that, but I look at things like the Career Academy and now AMP Lab as really the capstone, whereas we look at, trying to enhance the hands-on, authentic type of experiences in the classroom at a homeschool. Obviously and I think you could put the Career Academy in the same breath, being in a location like Electric Works in that immersive 3-hour block of time, I think they'll complement each other well. And what AMP Lab then can become, and I would hope then students that are really highly invested in that 3DE experience see something like AMP Lab as the way to take it to level 10. So I'm at that where I'm excited to continue to learn more about what that looks like. And I think the fun part about starting 3DE with 9th graders and then AMP Lab with juniors and seniors, that gives us a couple years for both of those to really figure out what they look like in action before we have to, I don't want to say really figure it out.
Well, I have 2 children that fall right into that. I have an 11th grader and an 8th grader. So I'm really interested, and I'm sure parents who are like me are really interested in where a direction that we're at, because it raises a lot of questions on what the right school for my child is and where they fall and what we see. We're putting a lot of things out there that are available to all of our kids. I know that my 8th grader really enjoyed his day for the JA experience and when they went on their field trip. And so I was looking at this pathway for the Career Center similar to something of that sort and helping him because he saw a lot of things. And I think that this is we're providing a lot of wonderful, as Steve mentioned, opportunities of the future that we don't know about. I mean, we have no idea. My kids are in a little bit of a different situation with my husband and I. We both own our own businesses and are very flexible. And for a long time, we thought that we did a real injustice to our kids because we didn't work regular 8-to-5 jobs and we were always available at this sporting event or whatever. What they did see that we didn't realize they saw until we got later was we work all night long sometimes. I mean, to be able to keep up and do and be able to juggle things, and we don't have regular paychecks, and we have to, look at our own insurance. And I think that's the direction that we're going a little bit more, as Steve mentioned. And I think that these will offer these students those opportunities to understand different ways that the world works. So I'm excited. I just have a lot of questions because I kind of fall right into that category. So I'm hoping that we aren't all guinea pigs, but yet we're the freshman class of innovation is what I like to call them.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I do have a question. You mentioned having students, diverse students. So if I'm a student that isn't doing so well academically and I need to catch up on some classes, if I leave the school for half the day to go to AMP Lab, am I going to be able to meet all my graduation requirements?
Yeah, so being able to fit it in the schedule is something that's really important. In the spirit of the freshman class of innovation, we're looking at both what are some ways we can partner with homeschools to support those students, but also on the other end, if I'm a student that might only be in honors classes, or I have a strong commitment to the performing arts, and I've got some structural issues in my schedule, we're looking at what would it look like for us to support on both ends of those, whether it be some remedial or whether it be some, call it advancement of credit that frees up that schedule and allows them to participate. Now we know there's always going to be a cohort of kids that just credit deficient wise, it's not the right choice, but it's really, I just had an amazing conversation with Matt Leopold at Northside about that, where what does it look like, because I'm going to have a diverse teacher population as well, for us to be able to support those students, to allow them that access, without it always saying, well, no, you can't because you have to go sit in a credit recovery class and stare at a screen. What would it look like for them to recover that credit in a unique way that allows them the best of both worlds?
And then on the other end of that spectrum, and you kind of alluded to it with the student that wants to be an architect, but what if my student is getting the academic honors diploma, plans to take AP courses? You know, how are we marketing this program to those students, the high achievers, high flyers?
So same. So we've worked really hard in the design to match the Indiana graduation pathways. So in terms of domain in 2 and 3, we meet both of those in terms of, I hate to use the word checking the box, but in terms of meeting those requirements. And so in the same vein, we believe, now it takes some foresight and planning, but most of the time if a student is on track for academic honors, they have a pretty clear picture of what that path looks like. And so far we found that in that planning process, they're gonna have to make some choices, but that they could still obtain academic honors or a technical honors diploma and include AmpLab in their experience.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'm excited. It's fun. It's hard in the ambiguity, but I really appreciate your guys' support. And in August, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, we appreciate all this work that you've put into it. I know you've met with some of us, and we appreciate that, you taking your time to do that. And I'm sure you have been very busy these days, but we really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing the completed building and even seeing some of the kids at work in this fall. So
thank you.
It's going to be exciting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, board member comments. Steve?
Yes, I was very pleased to read in yesterday's newspaper that we are going to be opening 4 vaccine sites, and details will be forthcoming, but I would encourage parents to take advantage of this opportunity. Those vaccine sites include Abbott, Adams, Bloomingdale, and South Wayne. So parents will have to approve of that, and I would encourage them to do that. The Omicron variant is very contagious, and I think this would be a great move for families to consider.
Thank you. Raleigh?
Last week, Steve, Julie, and I had a chance to tour AmpLab, or what will be AmpLab at Electric Works, and it was thrilling. You had a chance to watch or listen to Riley talk about the different programs and things that are available to our students, and so to hear that and actually be in the building was a really exciting experience. So I really encourage families and students who might be watching, if you're interested, find out more about it, apply, reach out to Riley, talk to your counselors, and see if it really is a good fit for your students.
I didn't intend to talk about this tonight, but as we all turn the page in our next year, I'm sure that many of us have, I don't want to call them resolutions, but maybe more goals. And I know that I set my goals each year and decide whether at the end of the year I've hit those goals or not hit those goals. And one of them this year that's really stuck with me is to be a better public education advocate. I didn't run for this seat to sit here, just for our own students, but for public education as a whole, because I felt like that we've slightly been under attack for many years. And I know that I have a lot of parent friends that are possibly out there watching, or teachers that I know, and I'm going to challenge you to be a better public education advocate as well, because as I reviewed the bills that are up for legislation this year, And in this session, we have a lot of bills that are facing us that will require our district to potentially require us for more resources and resources that we don't always have. And it'll also require mandates for our teachers to go so far above and beyond some of the things that they have to do already. And I think that Julie and Maria may talk a little more in specifics to that, but we have to pay attention to what our legislators are putting into bills that will directly impact our students, our teacher, our district, and in entirety, our community. We've talked about wonderful things happening right here in our community tonight. These wonderful projects that we have that are going to be better for our own, not only our students, but our community. And if we do not pay attention to what is happening with our elected officials and the bills that they are writing that will impact us, we're going to have some problems. And we're going to have problems having our students at these resources, because that's why I asked one of the questions, how many employees do we have to have there? Those take resources. And every mandate that's put on us that is not funded takes away from those resources. So I'm encouraging you all to read through the bills of legislation right now. Pay attention. I watched 2 hearings the last 2 days that I just had on while I was working, just so I could hear what was going on. And what really stood out to me is that the state of Indiana, I was trying to ask, and maybe Steve knows a little bit because he's down there a little bit more, but how many people work for the Indiana Department of Education? And how many do we as taxpayers support to be in that department? And the reason why I ask that is because the House Bill 0167, one of our senators specifically asked the senator who wrote the bill, and this is an education matters bill, did you collaborate with the Indiana Department of Education on this bill? And the answer was no. This is a bill that directly affects education, and he did not collaborate. Then they asked, is there somebody from the Department of Education that you requested to come in the room today to help support these questions? No. So we have people and senators and legislators who are writing bills who are not asking our professionals that are in education about their opinions and what it will cost us. And so I just don't understand why more people aren't getting involved in that and understanding that this is what's happening. When people are writing things, I can't imagine there be no people in the Department of Treasury that have any financial background at all being in their department, not being involved in a bill that is about our budget or any other thing that you want to think about, healthcare or whatever, and they're not asking those professionals. So I know that they have more, but as a whole, what I would like for people who are watching tonight, and if you are watching a school board meeting, means you generally have some, I mean, we're not always the most exciting people to watch, so if you are watching, means education is important to you. And everybody in this room, I feel that education is important to us, and it's for our children. So these bills that are being written, remember, we're here for the students and to support them and to have the resources that we need to support them. So I'm asking you to put maybe on one of your goals this year to be a better public education advocate. Thanks.
I hope everyone had a good holiday break. I just wanted to share, I was able to attend the vigil for Elijah Thomas Ross. And I know that at the end of a lot of board meetings, we get up here and we thank our teachers and our educators and everyone. And I think this might be the first time that I ever attended someone for a student that we had lost. And just the impact that that made on the staff and the teachers. We sit up here and we say that school is the safe place and school is the place where students, feel loved and the teachers care about the students like they're their own children. And we say those things, but then to witness it is a whole different story. Those teachers and staff members at Ronky Park, Elijah was their kid. And he was just a light in that building. And so I just wanted to remind everyone that being an educator is hard. And this is all during COVID, and I mean, just a lot of things are happening, and our educators and our principals and everyone, they're just going through a lot. And so just a reminder to be kind. And there was also a student that passed from Weiser Park as well, and I'm a parent there, and so I know how that affected classroom teachers and the principal there. So these are people that truly, truly care about our students. And so to lose one of those students really is like losing your own child. So just please keep those staff and those principals in your thoughts and prayers. And just my heart goes out to those staffs. I know that you all pour your heart and soul into these students and these families, and so to lose one of them is difficult. So, and that's all I had, really.
Thank you, Maria. Julie?
So along with, Raleigh and Steve, we enjoyed our visit to see AmpLab in progress. So thanks to you, Riley, and Corey from Elevatus, and Heather Krebs from our facilities department for being good hosts. It was really fascinating, and I'm looking forward to visiting again in September when, students are there and it's up and running, and to see the excitement there. Looking forward to that. So as most of you know, the college football playoff is being played tonight in Indianapolis, and I noticed that the Secretary of Education was talking about the fact that the College Football Playoff Committee, or whatever it is, has donated money to schools in Indiana. And I think tonight, maybe at halftime, they're going to honor some Indiana educators, and one of those is from Fort Wayne Community Schools. And they were calling them champions in the classroom. But as Jennifer said, and they are champions in the classroom. They're champions for our students, champions for families, for our communities. But at the same time, as Jennifer mentioned, we have legislators who are trying to make it harder to teach, harder to do their job in Indiana. And the bills that, two of the bills that, and they're identical, one's in the Senate, one's in the House, that Jennifer is talking about is Senate Bill 167 and House Bill 1134. And there's a lot in those bills. But the two main areas I want to mention are, one, the requirement that any material that a teacher would use in the classroom has to be posted online with enough time for parents to review. Now, I understand the need for transparency, but as one teacher there testified, she might go through 75 materials in a week. And for all the things and all the time and effort that teachers put forth, that is just, in my opinion, an unreasonable burden. One more thing that they have to deal with. And I'll also assume that the storage of all those materials for 1,800 teachers is not cheap. I mean, that's an unfunded mandate also for schools to pay for all that. The other thing, part of the bill, is the bill wants to restrict what teachers can teach or mention in class. It bans divisive concepts in class. The state senator who wrote the bill even mentioned, in response to one of the teachers who testified, that teachers should be neutral on Nazism. This is the guy who wrote the bill.
Or neutral on slavery.
Yes, neutral, yeah. But the really dangerous thing about the bill is that anyone can report a teacher or someone in a classroom for discussing a divisive concept or bringing in objectionable materials. It doesn't have to be the parent of a student in the classroom, doesn't have to be a taxpayer in the community, doesn't have to live in the school district. It could be anywhere in this country, it could be anywhere in the world. And there are some crazy groups in Indiana. I'm not going to mention them because I don't want to even mention the words, but you know, there's a group in Indiana right now that's claiming that educators in Indiana are pedophiles. Oh, excuse me, that's wrong. Public educators are pedophiles. And they are on the lookout all over the state to try to identify teachers that they believe are involved in that. And actually, when asked by a when asked by a legislator how many teachers this person thought were rogue educators in Indiana, I believe this person said, what? About a handful. So 5 or 6.
Out of several thousands.
Yeah.
But then the senator replied, how many teachers do we have in Indiana? And she said, or he said, 60,000.
Yeah.
So we're talking
He
about
said 60,000, so.
4 or 5 to 6 teachers versus 60,000 teachers who are rogue teachers.
Well, and that's part of the problem, Jennifer, is that this bill is in response to a vocal minority.
Right, exactly.
Okay? Teachers already, I mean, parents already have multiple opportunities to be involved in classrooms and to meet with teachers. You know, we have back to school nights, we have teacher conferences. Teachers, parents can volunteer in the classroom. They can pick up the phone or text or email teachers at any time to ask about what's going on in the classroom. They can come visit the classroom.
I'm sure teachers would be shocked to hear what these parents are claiming is happening in the classroom. You know, they would be shocked because just common sense tells you these things secondhand and bits and pieces. So you can make anything you want out of that secondhand information, interpret it any way you want because it's not the true story of what is happening in our classrooms.
And if there's one positive that the pandemic has given us is the one-to-one in our LMS learning system that for us in many, many districts, and I know there's some that aren't one-to-one, but for most districts in Indiana, we went one-to-one and all that information is there. I can look any day, any time and see exactly what my teachers are teaching in general. And if I have a question, you call your teacher. So my point on that was this is putting more mandates on something that exists. We're solving, or they're coming up with what they say, a solution to a problem that isn't there.
Correct.
And so we need people to get behind this and pay attention to these things so that our kids can have AmpWorks or AmpLab and all these other things that we want to provide them. But instead we have to use our resources on things that are nonsensical.
Right.
I didn't mean to step on your...
No, that's fine, that's fine. I mean, like you said, I hope that that we don't let this vocal minority put such unreasonable burdens on teachers that it exacerbates already is, a teacher shortage. So if you're interested in this, if you're interested in public education, maybe just email your representative about, or senator about Senate Bill 167, House Bill 1134, and mention that, you're against putting unreasonable burdens on teachers.
How many teacher openings do we have right now, roughly? Teacher openings.
I'd say we're at 50 to 75.
So Julie, as a former teacher, would this new burden, if it was passed, incentivize you or disincentivize you to become a teacher?
It would not disincentivize me because I love my job, I love education, I enjoy students, but what it might do is disincentivize me from creating my own materials, or, you know, how many materials, you know, Dr. Daniel, you and I taught the same subject. How many materials did you create the night before as a reaction to what happened in the classroom that day? Well, it's too late by that time to meet the timely burden so that parents can see it ahead of time. Is somebody going to report me for that?
We got 5 days.
Am I going to be sued, which is part of a bill?
We're just teaching in fear that you're going to say something wrong.
Exactly.
The fear of am I influencing this student? Am I giving my opinion? Am I, you know, how do you stay neutral?
I know. Am I going to get, you know, fired because I made them use the quadratic formula instead of the factoring that they love? I mean, you know.
Julie,
That
you
was
mentioned, you
math.
mentioned that they could potentially be sued. Can you talk about that number, that dollar amount that's attached to that?
About being sued.
About what number?
Being
Being
sued.
sued or fined.
Being
Oh,
fined.
yeah, well, there, of course, is a punishment aspect to both of these bills. Anybody can, I think one of bill says that educators can be sued, civilly sued.
Fines.
There's talk of, I mean, some of the speakers want fines to be levied. Part of the punishment is you could lose your license, teaching license. I mean, that's the kind of thing that would worry me. It wouldn't drive me out of education, but it might stifle, you know, some activity or some project or some something like that that I knew would be beneficial to students, but I didn't want to put up with the burden or didn't want to put up with the hassle. That's the sad thing.
My turn.
Sure.
Well, I'll just reiterate what everybody has said so far. I think the biggest piece I'd encourage is what Jennifer said, is pay attention and get involved. In my opinion, this would disincentivize someone to become a teacher, or at least someone who's on the fringe of thinking about becoming a teacher. I think it'd be hard to attract teachers. We're already seeing in Chicago what's happening with them not going back to school. So, you know, parents, and this is something that I became aware of when I started getting involved in education advocacy, is those decisions to the state impact what flows down to here. And the path we seem to be on, in my opinion, in the next 5 to 20 years, could eliminate traditional public education. And then what are we going to do? Where are we going to be able to serve these kids? How are we going to be able to grow and improve as a community? So that's my big concern. The other thing is I'll echo Maria's comments on appreciation. Also mention the name Sylvia Weston. I've had the pleasure of meeting Mrs. Weston, but she was the crossing guard on duty when a Black Hawk student was hit by a car. I tried to go out there and thank you for her service. And the Sylvia Westons out there, we have schools, we have over 50 schools, and I presume we have crossing guards, at least 30 of those of some nature. And it's not an easy task. I went out to try and meet her and thank her. She wasn't there that day. I don't even know if she's still working with us at the district, but I met with the police officer who's on duty. And he said, and I happen to know him, surprisingly, his wife's a teacher at Fort Wayne Community Schools. He says, Noah, I don't know the solution, but I know about 4 or 5 of the problems, and everybody's involved. And the biggest culprits are the drivers. So be careful out there as drivers around school areas, especially, please. And I just want to thank Ms. Weston for her service and all the Sylvia Westons out there that are waking up at, I don't know what time in the morning, because I got up at 6. I don't normally do that, to get there by Black Hawk and stand by a school crosswalk at 6:45 in the dark and a cold winter day. So thank you to Sylvia and all the Sylvias out there. That's all I got.
Dr. Daniel?
So, Julie, as you know, great teachers make adjustments from period 1 to period 2 to period 3 to period whatever. So therefore, as we've had conversation with superintendents around the state, this is very alarming to all of us. I'd also say House Bill 1182, which I think some information has been forwarded to you in regards to partisan school boards and working in that space. And I know, having been in a couple states and hearing how different states handle contacting politicians, an email will suffice. They do count numbers, and they do look at what am I receiving over the phone, over the text, over the email. So, you know, we've just been alerted that House Bill 1182, if you could respond prior to 8:30 tomorrow morning, it would be to our best interest. Again, I think that what we're trying to do in Fort Wayne Community Schools is being as transparent as possible by involving community members in our classrooms. I don't think you can be more transparent. So as we move further and further down the road of how do we have more community participation, because I don't care whether you're private school, parochial school, public school, it takes the entire community to focus one neighborhood at a time. And just this morning, Steve arranged for me to meet with John Dortch, and great conversation of how do we create mentors for our kids. I think our community leaders, our business leaders, whether they be from the private sector or public sector, they all agree we have the workforce in our public schools that is going to stay within Fort Wayne area. At least that middle 50%. Noah's talked about that several times. It's that middle 50%. We need to do whatever we can do to help prepare them with programs such as AMP Lab, 3DE, New Tech, but we really need to start that in pre-K. So what I've asked some of our leaders at the state level is, can you assist us with increasing the funding for pre-K? Because right now we have funding only through some special ed, or we use our Title I dollars. We are not given specific dollars from the state for students enrolled in our pre-K program. We do things very creatively to make it work, but it needs to expand tremendously. And we're not going to cover all the kids. Thus, we have to utilize our partnerships with those mom and pops who are having the 4 to 5 to 6 kids, and that's what we need to do, one community at a time though. So as you look at things like the Boys Club, Girls Club partnership with FWCS, well, there's also the Y that's doing things very similar through the Schwab Foundation. So how do we do a better job partnering with them and expand that, similar to what we've done with Boys Club, Girls Club? But you notice, it didn't happen. It happened because a person from the private sector donated a tremendous amount of money to support the renovation, the purchase and the renovation of the old Big Brothers, Big Sisters facility on Fairfield. Now that facility plans to be open not just for our 8th graders, which then could migrate to 7th graders and 6th graders, which I'm going to tell you, we need to start talking college and readiness and the success skills in pre-K. But it comes to really bear when a kid's in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, what are you really thinking of? What are your strengths? What are your passion? What are your, again, how do you get there? And that's something that we've now started to open up dialogue with Schwab Foundation with as well. Now, again, these things don't happen in isolation. We are an open book. As Jennifer said, because we have one-to-one technology, because we have an LMS, today we're using Schoology, this is wide open. Anyone can see this. If we need to post on the web what our curriculum is, okay, we should be transparent about that. But I don't think our parents are asking for this. I think there are other people who are asking for this because they have a desire to, what are we going to, how are we really going to address, or should I say, how are we going to take public education and put it to the ringer? 2-hour conversation this afternoon with teacher leaders. Again, I don't care what part of the community you're involved, whether you're a private business or what, it doesn't matter. The pandemic has created an environment that everyone seems to be on edge. There are some schools that have gone to virtual today. It is not our desire to go virtual. We will do everything we can to keep our doors open so kids have a place to go, similar to what Maria was talking about. I hate to say this, but as of tonight, our testing centers, Steve, will be closed because there are no tests available. We were open and willing to do it, trying to channel it down to our employees or our students and families only. But quite frankly, now we've had to shut that door because of the supply and demand piece. Just supply is not there. Demand's overwhelming. Yes, we all know that this virus has mutated to a point where it's upper respiratory, and we probably need to start shifting to what is the normal with upper respiratory. But we'll let the CDC, we'll let our hospitals, we'll let our health professionals guide us down that direction. But we are not going to shut our doors unless we can't get students to school or we can't get them home. And we've already started thinking about, well, how do we have, should we say, virtual labs within our schools because our teachers can't attend, but they may be home well enough to do it virtually. Not the best case scenario, but it's better than going completely virtual and students being home by themselves where we know learning doesn't happen. So we're going to fight this as long as we possibly can, just to let you know about that. So I think things are happening at the state level, and I look to our leadership from Dr. Jenner, who's our Secretary of Ed. She sees what we're doing here in Fort Wayne with AMP Lab, with 3DE, with the 8th grade Jim Kelly Pathway Center, Career Pathway Center, and she is saying that's the future, and I want to say that. This is the future. Our students need to graduate with dual credits, and one of our goals is, as we start to ramp things up, how do we have more students receiving dual credits? It's going to take time because it takes certifications for teachers to become eligible to be able to teach these courses. But there are things that are happening that I think are really going to create a catalyst for Fort Wayne, Indiana as being the place to live. Businesses will continue to grow. But we need the public school sector to be the conduit to make those things happen. And I'll say this, you also need private and you also need parochial. But we are the school district with the number of students. If you add up all the various public schools districts around us, we embody the educational system. Do you not want that system to be on the edge of what our economy needs to grow? And I think we're there. We're going to continue to have, as Riley Johnson said, you know what, I don't know really exactly where this is going to go, but I'm going there because I know it's going to be best for kids and it's going to be best for our community. So with that said, again, very grateful for boards such as yourself that serve and for people who want to truly dedicate time and their lives to this purpose. I hope people out there listening, and I hope this goes to all of our teachers and all of us in, quote, workers in the public sector, you've got to talk to your neighbors. Yes, they do contact us. And we have, one of the best CFOs in the state. So Yeah, they call Kathy and they talk and so forth, but there are times when a public has to come together to make that message strong. They can't just always rely on the superintendent or the CFO or just board members. So that is the challenge for this evening. And I hope we do make some sense of this. And the bills are amended so they're best for all students. That's what I truly hope that comes out tonight. So with that said, those are the end of my comments. Ann, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And sorry, could you, or I heard Steve eloquently talk about HB 1182 and why that's important to oppose the partisan side of school boards. So if someone talk about that.
I see many things that is wrong with that. You know, we don't want education to be someone's political agenda. We don't want boards making decisions because of their party's affiliation. I think we could lose a lot of really good superintendents if our school boards were partisan. You know, we don't want our children to be political pawns for people. So I support, you know, our school boards being nonpartisan as they are. You know, we're turning public education in the state of Indiana into a partisan game anyway with our appointed Secretary of Education. We don't
Even
vote.
though evident, that was supposed to solve the communication issue, I thought. So now we have an
Right.
appointed Secretary of Education who doesn't even speak to legislators in our own party.
Right. Did she testify on those bills? Or, you know, give an opinion about those bills? I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it.
Nothing important. But yeah, we don't vote for our superintendent of public instruction, the former name. We don't vote for our state board of education. So, you know, having our school boards nonpartisan, at least locally, and keeping that, at least parents do have a voice and know that we are going to make decisions in the best interest of our students and not in the best interest of our party. Does anybody have anything?
Thank you.
To add to that?
Well, I sent them an email during the course of our meeting and copied all of you, so hopefully you could send a quick note, and superintendent is correct. They count emails, messages, and it's important that they hear from all of us.
And if anybody out there wants to, you know, call their, for these bills, you would want to call the 1182 bill, the partisan school board bill, call the people on the House Education Committee. And if you probably do a Facebook search on Vic's State House notes, I'm sure someone has posted that, and where he would have, I believe he does have the emails and the phone numbers to call, but, you know, do either. But you want to notify or contact that committee that will be reading that bill tomorrow. So, on another topic, I believe it was last month we received our graduation rates, and Fort Wayne Community Schools was above the state average with an 88.59. We weren't necessarily the highest in Allen County as far as graduation rates, but a few years ago, Julie was pointing out our graduation rates, and she had what types of diplomas were received in each school district within Allen County. And I had noticed then that in Fort Wayne Community Schools, we had the lowest amount of the basic diploma of any of the county schools, which was wonderful. So when I saw the graduation rate, I remembered that. And so I did my research to see if that still held true for today, and it does. And again, I'm sure my math isn't perfect, because since the graduation rates are different, the percentages of who's got what type of a diploma probably is a little off. But Fort Wayne Community Schools only has 4.4% with the basic diploma. Next in line is 6.6%, all the way up to 11.1% with the basic diploma. So kudos to our guidance counselors and everybody who stresses the importance of getting at least the Core 40 diploma. We do a really good job of that in this district. Also, a former Fort Wayne Community School student who is a friend of my son and his girlfriend, who is also a former Fort Wayne Community School student, are opening a vintage thrift store called Dead Stock Vintage. And the reason I am mentioning this is because he contacted me and said, you know, when I was in elementary school going through school, you know, I received clothes from the school, or what do we call it?
Clothing bank.
Clothing bank, thank you, from the clothing bank. And, you know, I really appreciated having those warm clothes in the winter. And so when he has his grand opening on February 3rd for his store, he asked if he could have customers bring clothes to donate to the Fort Wayne Community Schools clothing bank. So I told him that, you know, I thought that was a great idea and gave him the contact information so that he could do that. And I told him I'd just give him a plug for thinking of us. But his store, Dead Stock Vintage, opens February 3rd. And if you take a donation for the clothing bank, you will receive a discount at his store. And again, these are Fort Wayne Community School kids.
Where is it?
Oh, thank you. It is on Broadway and West Wildwood in the old Wildwood Liquors building. So.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah, entrepreneur. All right, so that is all I have. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Move it, adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Take Alabama.
No.